Black Lives Matter is two things. First, Black Lives Matter is a moral statement. We don't even need to have the argument or the debate over whether it's acceptable to say all lives matter. That has become controversial. Let's just leave that aside and not even touch that right now. Does that statement saying all lives matter, does that detract from the plight of African Americans and other people of color? Let's just set that aside. We won't even have that discussion right now. Black Lives Matter is a true moral statement because African American people are just that. They are people made in the image of God, and that gives them inherent value. As a moral statement, Black Lives Matter, period. End of discussion. But secondly, Black Lives Matter has also become an ultra-left political movement. Some even refer to it as a political party because of some of its stated goals and objectives. I believe that the Black Lives Matter ultra-left political movement has hijacked the Black Lives Matter moral statement and uses that as a cover to advance causes that are not consistent with my understanding of biblical Christianity. And I give kudos to the ingenious strategy of the Black Lives Matter political movement in conflating their agenda with Black Lives Matter as a moral statement. And by doing so, now you have a political movement, as some would say, as I said before, a political party that cannot be questioned and cannot be called out. And if you do so, then you're labeled a racist. The very nature of politics and the advance of political ideology requires of us that these things are debated and they're questioned, and so we understand that can their positions stand on, can certain positions of certain political movements, can they stand on their own merits? That has become virtually impossible with Black Lives Matter as a political movement. I believe that if you were to interview the vast majority of people who have taken to the streets under the banner of Black Lives Matter and ask them to explain why they're protesting, most of them would of course point to situations like George Floyd or even Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta or something similar to that. And inequities and injustices that they perceive in our society, some are justified for sure and need to be addressed. That's why they're out there. Probably only a very small percentage of those folks would even be aware of the political agenda of the Black Lives Matter as a political movement. Ryan Baumberger, who is a strong Christian and probably most well known as being a pro-life advocate, he's also biracial. Ryan spoke at one of our CareNet banquets a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, our local CareNet banquet here just a few years ago. In a recent article, he cites some of the reasons why he, as a Christian, cannot, who also happens to be African American, cannot support the Black Lives Matter movement. I've done my own reading on this. I've listened to a lot of folks. I've listened to a lot of discussion, done some research, and in my opinion, Ryan is spot on with his observations. And I want to highlight just a few of the observations that he makes. Number one, I'm just going to give you 5 here real quickly. Sorry, this is a little longer than my typical recording during the week, but I just feel like this is so important and it was so heavy on my heart. Number one, with the Black Lives Matter political movement, within that movement, there is no goal of reconciliation or forgiveness. And that should cause every one of us who are Christians to stop and take a closer look at this movement and see how it squares with our understanding of the Christian faith. How do you move forward when there's no forgiveness and there's no reconciliation? Number 2, Black Lives Matter as a movement is pro-abortion and states the following: we deserve and thus demand reproductive justice, also known as abortion, that gives us autonomy over our own bodies and our identities. The irony of that statement is that I believe the majority in the African American community, the majority of folks are not pro-abortion. Not to mention the fact that the founder of Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest provider of abortion, Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, is the poster child for what a racist is. And she sought to locate, in the early days of her movement and the development of Planned Parenthood, sought to locate her clinics in minority communities with the goal of stopping or at least slowing down the birth of African American babies. The Black Lives Matter movement is pro-abortion. Number 3, the Black Lives Matter movement embraces homosexuality and transgenderism and states the following: we foster a queer-affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking. As a Christian, we are called to love all people, but that doesn't mean that we can or should endorse a lifestyle that is unbiblical. Number 4, Black Lives Matter movement, the Black Lives Matter movement dismisses the importance of the role of fathers in creating a healthy family structure. And they state the following: we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families in villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children, interesting choice of words, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. I find it fascinating that in that explanation there is no mention of the word father at all in their vision of what constitutes a healthy family. Fatherlessness is a scourge that is robbing today's youth of every color of one of the most foundational elements necessary to grow into a healthy, well-adjusted adult. 5th, the Black Lives Matter movement is anti-capitalist. Their statement reads, we are anti-capitalist. We believe and understand that black people will never achieve liberation under the current global racialized capitalist system. Now, we can discuss the excesses of capitalism. We can discuss the problems of capitalism all day long, caused by the way, the selfish nature and fallen nature of man. But it isn't even arguable that capitalism has lifted more people of every color out of poverty than any other economic system. That is just a fact. So there's others, but I'm going to stop here. I've gone a little longer than I normally do. I am not saying that every person who aligns with the Black Lives Matter movement, much less every person that takes to the streets to call for justice for people of color, walks in lockstep with all of these statements. I know that's not necessarily the case, but even as a loosely organized movement, these are some of the prevailing positions that seem to identify the goals of the Black Lives Matter political movement. So let's have the courage to stand for Black Lives Matter as a moral statement, while at the same time discerning the difference between that and the numerous unbiblical goals of the Black Lives Matter political movement and what they embrace. So let me know what you think. I'm sure I'll probably get some comments on this. I'm just trying to do my best to express my heart. I'm trying to do my best to sort this out. I hope this helps you, and I hope you'll take it to heart. God bless you.